everyone, Bill Lowen here with the guys from Bass University, and you all know what that means. That means we're going to be teaching you how to catch fish when you're out there on the water. At Bass University, we're trying to teach you all about fishing, and today is no different. We're going to talk about bladed jig fishing. And for those of you that aren't familiar with a bladed jig, it is essentially a jig with a little blade on it that vibrates through the water. There's probably not a time of the year that I don't have this bait tied on. This is actually a Strike King Thunder Cricket. And this is a bait for me that excels through winter, spring, summer, and fall. And we're gonna break that down. We're gonna tell you when we use it, why we select the sizes that we do, the trailer combination, the colors, anything that you wanna know about throwing a bladed jig, we are gonna break that down today. We're gonna talk about rods, we're gonna talk about line, like I said, time of the year, locations, techniques, presentations, anything you want to know about a bladed jig, today we're going to talk about it. All right, guys, one of the biggest questions that I get asked when I'm throwing a bladed jig is what type of rod do I use, what type of reel, what ratio, what pound test line, and we're going to break that down right now. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I've never been a fan of a glass rod for throwing a bladed jig on or throwing a Thunder Cricket on. I'm more of a graphite guy, but I like a parabolic rod, okay? My rod of choice is a Montgomery Thunder Cricket rod. It's got the perfect action, it's got the perfect parabolic bend, but when you get that bite, it still has enough backbone to drive that hook into the fish's mouth, okay? Let's touch on driving that hook into the fish's mouth. I think the biggest mistake I see when an angler gets a bite on a bladed jig is he wants to set the hook. I think that's us as anglers. It's our natural instinct to just want to set that hook as hard as we can. And that's exactly the opposite of what you want to do with a bladed jig, okay? And what happens with that bladed jig is when that fish gets that bladed jig in his mouth, as you can see, it's got a blade on it, okay? If you set that hook really hard, it has a tendency to jerk that blade forward and it pops that fish's mouth open, okay? That's the other reason to use a glass rod or a parabolic type rod, okay? Like I said, I'm not a big glass fan. I like a graphite rod, but it has to be parabolic. So when that fish eats that bait, you just kind of want to sweep the rod or load it to the side. That way you're not popping that blade open and popping that fish's mouth open. I guarantee you with a bladed jig, if you set the hook really hard, you're going to miss a lot of fish or lose them when you get them to the boat. So just remember that. When you get that bite, sweep that rod, let the parabolic rod do its job, and you're going to put a lot more fish in the boat, okay? Like I said, Montgomery Thunder Cricket rod from Lew's is my rod of choice. I'm not a big high-speed reel guy when it comes to this. I don't like a 7.5 or an 8.5 to 1. I'm a 6.4 or a 6.8 to 1. I like the Team Lew's Light. That gives me the ability to, if I want to fish that bait slow or if I want to speed it up and fish it fast, okay? For me, I don't want to ever overpower this bait. I don't want to be fishing it too fast. So by going with that 6.4 or 6.8 gives me that perfect gear ratio that I'm looking for with a bladed jig. Line choice for me is always fluorocarbon. My line of choice is a 20-pound Seaguar Invis-X or a 22-pound Tatsu, okay? I very rarely ever throw my bladed jig on braided line. For me, it's always fluorocarbon. Typically for me, like I said, it's always in that 20-pound Invis-X or 22-pound Tatsu,